This is Steve Zeltzer with Pacifica, and we've been covering the struggle of the Writers Guild of America West against the producers and the studios. And one of the major obstacles in the negotiations is a company called Netflix, which most Americans and people around the world are aware of. But they're not aware of the fact that Netflix owner, the founder of it, Reed Hastings, has actually been quite actively involved, not just in California, but nationally, in pushing privatization, charters, and computers and other technology in the schools to profit him and other tech barons. And we wanted to look into that in his history. And joining us today is Kathleen Carroll. She's a lawyer. She was formerly with the California Commission on Teacher Credentials in Sacramento, and she discovered there was a backlog of credentials. She became a whistleblower at the commission, and she discovered in her research about the role of these billionaires like Reed Hastings and their involvement in the education program in California. So welcome to our show, Kathy.
Thank you for having me.
So Kathy, why don't we talk about who is Reed Hastings and how did you discover him, and what is his role today, not just as the founder of Netflix, but in education in California and nationally?
I think I came across him when myself and another person working at the commission were trying to connect dots, if you will, or look into the backgrounds of actually individuals that were involved in pushing privatization of public education, specifically pushing the expansion of charter schools, online learning, and various education software to be used by various charter school chains such as Rocket Ship, KIPP, Aspire. In fact, he invested in and launched both Rocket Ship and Aspire. He was on the California State Board of Education for 4 years, from 2000 to 2004. I think he was initially appointed by Gray Davis, the governor of California, and then later reappointed by Arnold Schwarzenegger. He also has been on the board of the California Charter School Association, which is a powerful lobbyist organization here in California that also pushed the expansion of charter schools. They basically want charter schools to be kind of like New Orleans, where over 90% of the students in New Orleans attend charter schools. In fact, recently I found an article where one of the Louisiana state senators said the New Orleans experiment has failed, that students are graduating high school with only a 7th grade reading ability. They've massively failed in math and other core subjects. So he basically initiated a bill to try to put an end or put more restrictions on charter schools, but unfortunately that bill failed. There's a lot of money behind all of this privatization, and it can be very difficult to fight. Reed Hastings has put millions and millions of dollars into campaign coffers at the local level of school boards, at the state level, both the Assembly and Senate, at the national level, Congress positions and the like. He also just started his own fund called the Hastings Fund, where basically he put up $100 million, and the goal of the fund is to privatize and expand charter schools across the country. Now, he founded with the former insurance commissioner, Steve Poyser, and former state assembly member, Ted Lambert, an organization called EdVoice. This is another lobbying group like CCSA, the California Charter School Association, that spreads privatization through the expansion of charter schools, online learning, and the like. He also funded the Liftoff of New Schools Venture Fund. He was on the board of both Microsoft and Facebook. currently on the board of the KIPP Public Schools, which I believe is the largest charter school network in the country. He was on the board of the National Alliance of Charter Schools. He was a founding funder of the Green Dot Charter School chain. He, in terms of his background, he went to private schools. I think he attended some public schooling. He was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1960. He then went to college in Maine, and he got a master's degree in artificial intelligence from Stanford University. And one of the things that he invested in and was a board chairman is a company called Dreambox Learning. Dreambox Learning is heavily used by Rocket Ship and Aspire, I believe, and numerous other charter school chains. And it's mainly involved in math learning, but it's also involved in reading. So he has his hands kind of over a lot of things. He also was a founder of the Charter School Growth Fund. And if you look at the funders of this, it's a who's who of billionaires, including Reed Hastings, who invested millions of dollars in this Charter School Growth Fund. It includes the Walton Family Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, John Doerr, numerous billionaires who have coalesced and put their money in this Charter School Growth Fund. And as the name suggests, they want to expand or grow the charter schools across the country. And they have been quite successful. Here in California, I was surprised before our interview to learn that charter schools in the state of California make up 11.7, so almost 12% of the student population in California. So it's continuing to grow, because I believe the last time I checked, it was just under 10%, and that wasn't that long ago. Student population here in California, I'm talking about K-12, not higher ed, it's about 6 million students. So I think I read that it's close to 700,000 students that are now attending charter schools, 689, I believe.
It's a charter school system. Many people did not know about it until they started taking over school districts, or playing a large part in school districts in Los Angeles, in Oakland, and many other school districts. And as you said, they're funded by billionaires. But the whole introduction of charter schools in California, 1992, was the charter school bill, and that was pushed through by threatening the CTA and the California Federation of Teachers that unless they allowed charter schools, they would go with the vouchers. What role did Hastings play in the 2002 Prop 39 bill?
I believe he was financially pushing that. He definitely is all about expanding charter schools. He actually is quoted as saying, and if you go Google this, he's on a YouTube saying he wants to abolish all locally elected school boards. He wants to transfer it over to complete private corporate governance. So co-locating means that a charter school gets authorized to open, and then the state is required to find them a place to open their school. And basically, co-location is that the charter school shares space with a traditional public school already operating sometimes for decades, and now they have to share a space with these charter schools. I should further say that yesterday was the anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, the 69th anniversary, and yet not much or anything that I could see was mentioned on the mainstream media. I guess not a surprise. But there's been numerous studies showing that charter schools actually exacerbate segregation. Some schools like Oakland Unified never desegregated. They worked out some deal with former Governor Jerry Brown not to desegregate. And you can see all the problems that have been happening in Oakland. School closures predominantly are low-income schools. They're, in the flats. low income, usually students of color, not all necessarily. And they're never the higher income families or rich families. Those schools are never targeted for closure. And the schools that are targeted for closure, sometimes they're historic schools. I think there was a school in Oakland that they had to take the school off the list because it was a historic site. That kind of thing is just happening. This uproots families. In some cases, the families are now added the stress because charter schools tend to not take students with behavioral problems, students with special needs or disabilities, English language learners. There's a whole, they basically cherry pick their students because if they're successful, they could maybe try to petition to expand or, to open another school or a chain of schools. And I've seen
this conspiring, I mean, I think it should be prosecuted criminally to violate the discrimination laws for profiteering and building up the charter school empire. And of course, Reed Hastings has done the same apparently in the industry writers union, where they basically attack the conditions and benefits of the writers using technology and AI. And the AI and technology has been brought into the charter schools. As you said, some of these billionaires who control the charter chains are actually using the students as guinea pigs with their technology and software.
Yes.
Is that the case?
That is the case. And in fact, I mentioned New Orleans. A lot of this stuff is not working. It's just, they're basically losing out on a education, which is supposed to be, fundamental right. It certainly is here in California. It's written into our state constitution that it's a fundamental right. And yes, as you say, segregation, I think there was a school in Marin County, it was in Marin City schools. There was 2 middle schools, I believe, in the same district, and Attorney General Javier Becerra actually did an investigation on the school in Marin City was predominantly Black. The school in Sausalito, which was in the same district, was predominantly white. News resources, plenty of books, and yet you look at the Marin City school where they're lower income students, but in the same district, hardly any books, hardly any teachers. I mean, there was videos of the school, and it was quite shocking. Those students weren't getting an education. So Becerra actually did an investigation, which is rare to have an AG investigate these things because segregation is pervasive, not just across California, but across the country. And as I said, both UCLA and Stanford have done studies on this showing the exacerbation of segregation of students as a result of decades-long, I call it an experiment in these charter schools. So, and no one's really fighting it. No one's really even talking about it, frankly.
Well, there was a commission set up by State Department of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, and in fact, he put on charter operatives, people who operate charter schools on that commission to investigate charter schools. And of course, the Board of Education, the State Board of Education, has charter people who've been appointed by former Governor Brown and Governor Newsom, and the Thomas representing charter companies. But the other issue is that companies like Oracle, which is owned by Larry Ellison, who's another billionaire supporter of charter schools, has actually built a privately run charter school on the Oracle campus in Redwood City. So we, the taxpayers, are paying for his school, privately run charter school on the Oracle campus. At the same time, schools in Redwood City, working class schools and poor schools, don't have the proper funding. They don't have the supplies and services that the charter school gets. So it sounds like another form of segregation and benefiting the billionaires like Reed Hastings, who apparently wants to destroy the entertainment workers, the right to make a livelihood in the entertainment industry using this AI. The question of charters in California why do you think it is that the CTA and the California Federation of Teachers are supporting charters if they're union, which is at the same time creating a two-tier system?
Diane Ravitch wrote a book, Death and Life, The Life and Death of the American School System. I might have that title incorrect, but on a particular page of the book, she literally says that the teachers' unions were given money by these privatizers in exchange for their silence, meaning they're to stay neutral and not fight the charter school movement in exchange for them receiving money. And over the years, I certainly looked up documents that were filed. A lot of these entities are nonprofits. So the teachers union formed nonprofit. Reed Hastings has formed nonprofits. These are nonprofits, I should say, in name only, because they are making profits. So, the teachers union, unfortunately, has taken money from these people. We have seen they have stayed neutral. So I guess money is more important than doing the right thing for some of the union leadership. I'm not saying everyone's taken money. There are good people in the union, but unfortunately their information comes from the top, like most organizations, and these people are receiving a narrative not to attack charter schools, basically.
And Bill Gates, of course, was invited to the convention of the AFT by Randy Weingarten. And recently there was a apparently scandal in New York City where she comes out of a Green Dot school. She's actually on the runs a Green Dot school in New York City, and she was allowed to get rooms while other schools were not. What was that scandal about in New York City?
Oh, yeah, that happened, I think, fairly recently. So Randy Weingarten, who is the president of the National American Federation for Teachers, she founded a Green Dot school, like you say, in New York City, but the name has changed. And unfortunately, I can't remember the name, but I'm sure it's something that's Googleable. The article about what happened is also, if you Google it, basically, she was attacking Eva Moskowitz and a lot of, charter expansion. Basically, she was trying to repress the co-location of these charters into New York City schools. Recently, she wanted to expand her own charter school into a facility of a traditional public school, and it was allowed. And so there are people, saying she's a hypocrite. On one side of her mouth, she's attacking the co-location. On the other side, she's fighting for her own charter school to relocate into a New York public school. And I should say, I think you remember years ago, we watched a movie about New York City teachers trying to fight the co-location in New York City. I mean, most of us know New York City is an extremely crowded, overpopulated city. And you can imagine the schools, the public school system does not have a lot of space. And teachers that were protesting, and I think they did their own documentary kind of in fight for waiting for Superman that came out that basically was attacking teachers and teacher tenure. These teachers were saying that they had to give up music rooms. I mean, there's very little space in these public schools. I mean, I've been to New York City numerous times. I've seen some of the schools. They don't have, greenery. They have concrete to play on, and there isn't a lot of room. It's very packed in. So the fact that she would even think about doing this is quite shameful in my mind. But
and in California, I mean, this connection between the Writers Union, Writers Guild, and also the teachers who are also fighting charters in Los Angeles, the Broad Foundation. It seems like this united struggle against Reed Hastings and these other tech billionaires who want to destroy public education and also wipe out the income of the entertainment workers, there's a real connection and basis for solidarity between both groups.
Yeah, I think, certainly some of the connection has to do with artificial intelligence, which has been expanding moment by moment. I certainly am not an expert in artificial intelligence, but it's being used as a tool for education. Yeah, I certainly read recently that they hope that artificial intelligence, as it gets more and more capable of doing human tasks, which machines aren't known to do. The possibility for writing scripts certainly is there. I mean, I can imagine it would be pretty boring because, good stories are often involve, personal experiences, a voice of a human being and a certain emotional tone. And I think we're a ways off of seeing AI. So they're able to write essays with artificial intelligence. So I haven't read any of them. I don't know if you could, there's a distinction. I certainly there's the capability of filtering out things. So they collect data. So they're collecting data, whether we use a cell phone, whether we use email.
Well, they're actually scraping data from portfolios of artists on the internet and using it for this artificial intelligence. But
so they're able to distinguish patterns, likes and dislikes. Yeah. And so they're collecting data. They're able to create patterns of the language. They're able to be able to decipher and make decisions. And it's quite scary how this could really
Reed Hastings, Netflix doesn't want to negotiate, and a writer has said the WGA is not formally calling for a boycott of Netflix, but because Netflix is the reason the screenwriting profession has gone from a sustainable career to a highly exploitative gig economy model, and because they're the ones refusing to negotiate reasonable terms in the contract, I think it's valuable to target this company in particular. So there's an unofficial boycott of Netflix. Do you think that this issue of the role of these billionaires, and particularly in politicians, because they fund not just the Republicans, but they fund the Democratic Party, and the support of the Democratic Party for charters is with Obama and Arnie Duncan, who are big supporters of charters. You think that's an issue and a problem?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, both major parties have thrown support and policy towards the expansion of charter schools. Race to the top was Obama, No Child Left Behind was Bush, and they both were trying to advance the expansion of charter schools across the country by offering money for those who quote unquote innovate in such a way that basically, meant online learning, education software, expansion of charter schools,
and so testing
in order to get the money. Yeah, and then testing. Teaching to the test is an absolute disgusting failure, and yet in a lot of places that's still happening. I think the opt-out movement was somewhat successful, but not a complete success.
And the teachers can't do their own tests. They've got to hire companies owned by Pearson and other private operators to make money profiteering from more and more tests, including tests on teachers. And that was even an issue at the Commission on Teacher Credentials. Some of the members were complaining, the teachers, that they were being over-tested and stressed out because of the tests themselves. So I want to thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Kathleen Carroll about Reed Hastings, who is the founder and has a large number of shares of Netflix, and that company has been an obstacle in reaching an agreement. And certainly they want to fight the ability of this Writers Guild to actually have some control over the introduction of this technology to protect their jobs, to protect their livelihood, and protect the future of this industry. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I enjoyed the conversation.